Hey, what up, y'all? Baloo here. I'm just going to pick up right where I left off and read a little bit more mutual aid. Of the scientific followers of Darwin, the first, as far as I know, who understood the full purport of mutual aid as a law of nature and the chief factor of evolution, was a well-known Russian zoologist, the late dean of the St. Petersburg University, Professor Kessler. He developed his ideas in an address which he delivered in January 1880, a few months before his death, at a Congress of Russian Naturalists. But, like so many good things published in the Russian tongue only, that remarkable address remains almost entirely unknown. As a zoologist of good standing, he felt bound to protest against the abuse of the term. The struggle for existence, borrowed from zoology, or at least against overrating its importance. Zoology, he said, and those sciences which deal with man continually insist upon what they call the pitiless law of struggle for existence. But they forget the existence of another law which may be described as the law of mutual aid, which law, at least for animals, is far more essential than the former. He pointed out how the need of leaving progeny necessarily brings animals together, and the more the individuals keep together, the more they mutually support each other, and the more are the chances of the species for surviving, as well as for making further progress in its intellectual development. All classes of animals, he continued, and especially the higher ones, practice mutual aid, and he illustrated his idea by examples borrowed from the life of the burying beetles and the social life of birds and some mammalia. The examples were few, as might have been expected in a short opening address, but the chief points were clearly stated, and after mentioning that in evolution of mankind, mutual aid played a still more prominent part, Professor Kessler concluded as follows. I obviously do not deny the struggle for existence, but I maintain that the progressive development of the animal kingdom, and especially of mankind, is favored much more by the mutual support than by mutual struggle. All organic beings have two essential needs, that of nutrition and that of propagating the species. The former brings them to a struggle and to mutual extermination, while the needs of maintaining the species bring them to approach one another and to support one another. I am inclined to think that in evolution of the organic world, in the progressive modification of organic beings, mutual support among individuals plays a much more important part than their mutual struggle. The correctness of the above views struck most of the Russian zoologists present, and Syevertsoff, whose work is well known to ornithologists and geographers, supported them and illustrated them by a few more examples. He mentioned some of the species of falcons which have an almost ideal organization for robbery and nevertheless are in decay, while other species of falcons which practice mutual help do thrive. Take, on the other side, a sociable bird, the duck, he said. It is poorly organized on the whole, but it practices mutual support, and it almost invades the earth, as may be judged from its numberless varieties and species. The readiness of the Russian zoologists to accept Kessler's view seems quite natural, because nearly all of them have had opportunities to study the animal world in the wide uninhabited regions of northern Asia and East Russia, and it is impossible to study like regions without being brought to the same ideas. I recollect myself the impression produced upon me by the animal world of Siberia when I explored the Vitim regions of the company of so accomplished a zoologist as my friend Polyakov was. We both were under the fresh impression of the origin of species, but we vainly looked for the keen competition between animals of the same species which the reading of Darwin's work had prepared us to expect, even after taking into account the remarks of the third chapter. We saw plenty of adaptations for struggling, very often in common, against the adverse circumstances of climate, or against various enemies, and Polyakov wrote many a good page upon the mutual dependency of carnivores, ruminants, and rodents in their geographical distribution. We witnessed numbers of facts of mutual support, especially during the migrations of birds and ruminants. But even in the Amur and Ussuri regions, where animal life swarms in abundance, facts of real competition and struggle between higher animals of the same species came very seldom under my notice, though I eagerly searched for them. The same impression appears in the works of most Russian zoologists, and it probably explains why Kessler's ideas were so welcomed by the Russian Darwinists, whilst the ideas are not in vogue amidst the followers of Darwin in Western Europe. The first thing which strikes us as soon as we begin studying the struggle for existence under both its aspects, direct and metaphorical, in the abundance of these facts of mutual aid. I'm going to start that one over. The first thing which strikes us as soon as we begin studying the struggle for existence under both its aspects, direct and metaphorical, is the abundance of facts of mutual aid, not only for rearing progeny, as recognized by most evolutionists, but also for the safety of the individual and for providing it with necessary food. With many large divisions of the animal kingdom, mutual aid is the rule. Mutual aid is met with even amidst the lowest animals, and we must be prepared to learn someday from the students of microscopical pond life facts of unconscious mutual support, even from the life of microorganisms. Of course, our knowledge of the life of the invertebrates, save the termites, the ants, and the bees, is extremely limited, and yet, even as regards the lower animals, we may glean a few facts of well-ascertained cooperation. The numberless associations of locusts, vanessae, cicindulae, cicadae, and so on, are practically quite unexplored, but the fact of their very existence indicates that they must be composed on about the same principles as the temporary associations of ants or bees for the purposes of migration. As to the beetles, we have quite well observed facts of mutual help amidst the burying beetles, Necrophorus. They must have some decaying organic matter to lay their eggs in, and thus to provide their larvae with food. But that matter must not decay very rapidly, so they are wont to bury in the ground the corpses of all kinds of small animals which they occasionally find in their rambles. As a rule, they live an isolated life, but when one of them has discovered the corpse of a mouse or bird, which could hardly manage to bury itself, it calls 4, 6, or 10 other beetles to perform the operation with united efforts. If necessary, they transport the corpse to a suitable soft ground, and they bury it in a very considerate way, without quarreling as to which of them will enjoy the privilege of laying its eggs in the buried corpse. And when Gleditch attached a dead bird to a cross made out of 2 sticks, or suspended a toad to a stick planted in the soil, the little beetles would in the same friendly way combine their intelligences to overcome the artifice of man. The same combination of efforts has been noticed among dung beetles. Even among animals standing at a somewhat lower stage of organization, we may find like examples. Some land crabs of the West Indies and North America combine in large swarms in order to travel to the sea and to deposit therein their spawn, and each such migration implies concert, cooperation, and mutual support. As to the big Molucca crab, I was struck in 1882 at the Brighton Aquarium with the extent of mutual assistance with which these clumsy animals are capable of bestowing upon a comrade in case of need. One of them had fallen upon its back in a corner of the tank, and its heavy saucepan-like carapace prevented it from returning to its natural position. The more so as there was in the corner an iron bar which rendered the task still more difficult. Its comrades came to the rescue, and for 1 hour's time I watched how they endeavored to help their fellow prisoner. They came to at once, pushed their friend from beneath, and after strenuous efforts succeeded in lifting it upright. But then the iron bar would prevent them from achieving the work of rescue, and the crab would again heavily fall upon its back. After many attempts, one of the helpers would go in the depth of the tank and bring 2 other crabs, which would begin with fresh forces the same pushing and lifting of their helpless comrade. We stayed in the aquarium for more than 2 hours, and When leaving, we again came to cast a glance at the tank. The work of rescue still continued. Since I saw that, I cannot refuse to credit the observation by Dr. Erasmus Darwin, namely, that the common crab during the molting season stations as sentinel an unmolted or hard-shelled individual to prevent marine enemies from injuring molted individuals in their unprotected state. Well, that seems like a good place to leave off. Again, some of the phrasing and the way these sentences are written makes it a little bit difficult, especially to read aloud. Some of the proper nouns, I'll be honest, I don't know how to pronounce them. But at the same time, I'm starting to appreciate what they're saying, which is we're told so often that it's survival for the fittest, kill or be killed. And I think upon that premise, a lot of our society is built. So they're starting by, sort of refuting that basic axiom that has been assumed in the construction of our society. And I'm intrigued. I'm interested to hear more.